Hello, welcome to SafetyChain's webinar. Today's session will be FSQA, Operations Technology Tools for Success. Delighted to be hosting today's session. We typically do a high-level solutions overview, but today we're going to have some fun and really focus on some of the technology tools and what's being achieved to drive better results. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jill Bender. I am the VP of Marketing here at SafetyChain. I'm also delighted, as always, to have my colleague Dave Detweiler over in sales. Good morning, or I should say midday to you, Dave.
Exactly. Hey, Jill. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. We're in for some fun, for sure.
Yeah, we try to make these interactive and informative as possible. So we're going to keep this pretty straightforward today. We're going to chat a little bit about real-time data and the power, some of the challenges with manual or siloed processes, some of the technology tools for success, but then we'll really have some fun and show high-level demos of the solutions as well as some case studies and, of course, your questions and answers. A few housekeeping tips. This is on WebEx. If you can't hear us as nicely on your computer speakers, I encourage you to call in to the phone number provided. We do encourage questions. There is a Q&A tab within the platform that you can put questions in, and we'll take those as they come in or at the end. And finally, for those asking, there is a recording that will be sent out within a few days of this event. Delighted to see quite a few people on with us today. Thank you for taking the time. But as always, we just make sure you can see the panelists to make sure everyone has their confidentiality as far as who's joining us. So with that, let's go ahead and get going. So Dave, what do we got here? An iPhone or a regular phone? But regardless, if we were in a big room with live audience, we would say how many people use these? And I think everyone would show their hands up. And, we could say, well, why do you use your smartphones? And, really, it's all about information, right? And information on the fly to help you stay in touch, make decisions, hopefully run your day smarter. And, again, we rely on real-time data every day. It helps us, keep more efficient with our schedules, know what's going on in the world and the news, with work and everything else. But what's interesting about this is...
I like that you gave everybody credit, Jill, for being in a big room and having a cell phone. I'm sure there's many of the people on the phone today that are actually looking at their phone right now as they're watching this, right? We're not only accustomed to receiving data from one channel, which is you and I speaking here, people are also multitasking as well, right? Data is just an influx into our minds constantly, and it's because of the technology that surrounds us day to day, for sure.
And I would say that we rely on real-time data every day, but to your point, Dave, absolutely, it also is a distraction, right? Or it's a bit of a needle in the haystack of what should we most importantly care about, right? And it's honing in that data that's coming into us to make it most useful. So for those multitasking, I guess, put your phones down. I'm just giving you a hard time. But you look at that too. Conversely, in the food safety and quality operations world, data is pivotal to your success. It's everywhere in order to ensure that you are putting out a safe quality product, no matter where you are in the food supply chain. And, it could be out in the fields, it could be in a manufacturing facility, distribution, on the trucks for delivery, in your retail environment with ready-to-eat foods and so forth. But what's interesting about that is, there's a lot of data points that are coming in and things that you do every single day or weekly or quarterly or yearly where you're relying on data, whether it's your HACCP program, your GFSI plans, your tracking of your CAPAs or CAFE has to be. I could go into a myriad of everything that you're doing every single day. That's part of your protocols and part of your programs in ensuring and protecting your company and putting out the best safe quality product out there every day. But this is the part that gets challenging is how best to manage all that data. And currently the way that it's done is all either manual or siloed. So there's a lot of, again, if we're in all the room, say how many people use email as a way to manage your data or Excel spreadsheets or perhaps SharePoint drives. So people are using technology in different ways, right? But there's also a very manual-based component to it. I don't know if there's anything you want to add here, Dave, but you've been countless,
I think the irony around this is that we all showed up to this meeting today. We all are sitting here with smartphones. We're all sitting here connected to Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and everything else that we're connected to in our day-to-day lives. But when we walk into a food manufacturing facility, the connection is a filing cabinet. The connection is a shared drive. The connection, maybe if you're lucky enough, is an Excel spreadsheet that everybody's sharing, you know, in some kind of document repository. But the idea here, and this is really the irony, Jill, and this is where we're, you know, part of the reason for the presentation today is, I think we all know this. I'm hoping that a lot of you are nodding your heads right now. But the idea that this has to change. You can't have, you know, I laughed about a week or so ago, I was working in a manufacturing facility and I said, you know, as the generations change, can you imagine what it'll be like to hand a clipboard to some of your new employees? It'd be like how I handed my grandmother an iPad, you know, 6 years ago, you know, and she looked at it like, what is this? That's where we're at, and we're still trying to work through this, and really the main point of this, and we're going to talk a lot about data aggregation and getting value back out of that data, but the main thing here that everyone on the phone, I believe, understands is the requirements. You have to continually produce this data. You have to go find the information, and then, oh, by the way, at the end of the week, your boss wants the information to, you know, help the facility, or the general manager is looking for better ways to, you know, increase start time and, you know, decrease downtime and all that kind of stuff. And all this data lives in a filing cabinet, lives in an Excel spreadsheet. It's almost impossible to pull together, Jill, and we see companies just wasting hours and hours of labor time, as well as not even having access to that true actual data that they are creating, right, that everyone here is creating today. So I think this is it's a big area of focus that I think we all can acknowledge is kind of the proverbial elephant in the room, Jill, that we're talking about here.
Absolutely, elephant. And I think, you know, it often comes of us as a trite term, but when you think about all the data points being gathered, you know, every single day within your surrounding, you know, in order for you to do your job, it's that whole, you've got a lot of data, but it's the whole data-rich, information poor. And it's, you know, a little bit of the trying to find the needle in the haystack to make sure you're covered. So when you think about that, really, what does that get to? Why do we care, right? And, you know, and Dave, I'll let you go there as far as, you know, some of the basic challenges that are obvious, but it's always good to at least reiterate, right?
Well, this is the comment, Jill, right? And the challenges everybody can read here on their screen, but think about it. What everyone will say is, oh, well, Dave, these tools are cheap, or these tools are free. You know, paper doesn't cost us anything. It does. It costs you tons of time. It costs you labor hours. It costs you the ability to actually find information. I can't tell you how many times, and I guarantee that many of you on the phone here today can say, you know, with a little chuckle, right? You know, hey, I went back through, I had to review my records, getting ready for an audit. Oh, you know, there were some records that weren't quite complete, or my program wasn't quite being followed or attended to at this time. The idea that, you know, as we look at this, the biggest element or image I like to put in people's heads, Jill, is the idea that, you know, we're almost driving a car right now. When you're doing and capturing information on paper and in a filing cabinet, you're driving that car in the rearview mirror. You don't drive your car that way, right? You look in the windshield and you look at a sweet dashboard that tells you how fast you're going and what the RPMs are on your car and how much gas you have, right? How come we drive these wonderful facilities, beautiful, multi-million-dollar facilities? We drive them looking in the rearview mirror, looking back at a file folder, looking back at a filing cabinet, looking back at an Excel spreadsheet, trying to figure out what happened, rather than looking out in front and going, hey, by the way, let's get ahead of this, right? And I think that's really the overall challenge with doing this on paper and doing it pen and pencil and doing it in clipboards and Excel spreadsheets is really just having that ability to work real time. It's what we all became and have become accustomed to. I can guarantee you, each of you have probably received a call from a customer at some point asking you for something. Can you imagine the idea that you sat there, you're sitting here on this call today on your phone, you just got a tweet from your best friend, you know what's going on at home, you know what the weather's going to be like tomorrow, but your customer calls that could be paying you hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they ask you for something, and you say, hold on, I'm going to have to go find that, right? I'm going to have to go look in the filing cabinet, I'm going to pull that information, I'm going to put it together, and then I'm going to email it to you. It just doesn't make sense, right? We need to catch that part of the industry up, Jill, for sure.
No, absolutely. But you also look at that, you know, from a risk standpoint, you know, customers certainly, as far as losing confidence in, you know, in who they're working with. But there's a lot of other risks that are from large to small, depending on the everyday events. Why don't you share a little bit your thoughts on this as well, Dave?
We all do it, right? Everyone here, food safety, quality professionals. I see some operations folks on the call too today. the idea we're all looking for better ways to run our business, right? That's key. You know, no one's sitting out there with a blank check going, hey, Jill, go hire a bunch more people, and we're going to put up all these lines. That's not how it works, right? And we know that. So there's a couple inherent risks in just doing things paper-based, right? One, like we talked about, there's no transparency. You can't see what's going on. You don't have any concept into that window, especially not that real-time window of time. So, you know, you talk about things like non-compliance issues or even customer complaints coming back, right? Hey, how did I get this? Why did you get that? I don't know. I'm going to go figure it out, right? Or the idea of uptime and downtime. I think one of the best things I've heard from our Vice President of FSQA here at SafetyChain is the concept of, hey, any moment that we can increase, you know, your line operating, right? Your line being up, the lines actually processing, the flow of your supply chain happening, is money in your pocket, right? It's the ability to increase the size of your facility without actually expanding the walls. And the idea with that is that with data, you can start to predictively analyze what happens. It's not just a gut feeling anymore. And I know that many of you on the phone, that's what happens. You've done this for decades, some of you, right? 10, 20 years. Hey, Dave, I know what's going on in my facility. I got a gut feeling. I understand it. But what we're talking about here today is taking that data and actually making it predictive, using that information to understand what truly is happening and how you can actually affect it. So you talk about things like rework, Jill. I mean, how many organizations have we been through in facilities? You know, what's rework look like? Some people are fortunate enough that's a minimal cost, but then they start to look at waste or returns or those complaints coming back from customers, and that's really how having access to data can eliminate some of these risks. Not only eliminate some of these risks, but as the picture shows on the left side, put some of that money back in your pocket, right? Because we're all working really hard and we're all trying to do the right thing. The idea is without that data, we're not able to actually affect the cause of what's happening.
No, absolutely. And I think it's interesting, too, because when you think about risk, there's smaller risks, definitely. Then there's the larger risk as things cascade out. So it's the idea here that anything, you know, from a risk mitigation, I mean, we all know that's part of your GFSI plan or certainly dictated under preventive control rules with FSMA or just your internal protocols. It's any way to further mitigate that, obviously, the better. But then, of course, you always talk about this, and this is always what gets in the news, right, is that bigger risk of protecting your brand. There's more to it. We've already talked about that. There's everyday risks that can be mitigated. But at the end of the day, you know, if it gets out there, there's a considerable, huge risk to your brand is, you know, many companies continue to fall through on that. And a lot of them, they get, obviously we know this, out there more to be the household brand names that people know, but the cascade effect, you know, back upstream and all downstream, that's people that are impacted in the business around that.
Both streams, huh, Jill? Up and back, front and forward, all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, it's, but you think about, too, as far as, you know, preventive versus reaction, and that's really what technology can afford you and the right technology tools for success. It's really getting in front of that and getting, you know, the quicker time of discovery is the less impactful to your business, and that's really the name of the game here, right, is, you know, prevention versus reaction and having the insights, the data and the business intelligence to get you there. I think
you're seeing this happen you're seeing this happen not only from a regulatory standpoint, Jill, you know, so FSMA, right, big based on, and I know I have plenty of FSMA compliant organizations or becoming compliant organizations here on the call today, but it's not just the regulatory side, it's also the non-regulatory side, right? The idea that now you're seeing GFSI schemas put together, you know, the requirements around statistical process control and the start of real-time reporting or real-time monitoring of this information. It's really where we're heading, and I think that we're all being pushed in a good direction because truly the technology is out there to enable this to happen, Jill. We're just not at the point where everyone's using technology, right? I mean, paper's very tough to be preventative in nature. Paper's very easy to be reactionary around. That's what we've all grown up on, right? Submit your report, teacher grades it, gets it back to you in 2 days. Here, we could use something a little bit quicker than that. So it's absolutely, prevention is key, and prevention exponentially cuts the cost of anything associated with what we mentioned earlier with those risks, right? The prevention side or capturing it as quick as humanly possible as you go through this process will cut down on any of those lost costs.
No, absolutely. I think what's interesting to note here, too, is it's not because the industry, you know, that we haven't, in prospects or customers haven't wanted to adopt it. It's more that the technology is finally caught up, if you will, to the needs of the industry, and that's where SafetyChain's been from the onstart of, how to capitalize the technology to really drive efficiencies that get you to that better risk mitigation and prevention versus reaction. So when you think about technology, we've sort of distilled it really down to 4 key ways that technology helps, and that's what we're going to go through and sort of show you, how SafetyChain achieves that. Do you want to take us through that, Dave?
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right, Jill, and I didn't mean to make an assumption that we all don't want to use technology. We all have bought into technology, right? The idea is that, hey, how can this technology actually be efficient enough to affect the complex environments that every one of you are sitting here watching this today? So I'm sure that every one of you today is sitting there going, yeah, automation or technology would be great, but I work in a really complex environment. Or I have spent a lot of time creating these programs, and I'm very proud of them, and I'm nervous that the technology can't actually handle it the way I'd like to handle it. So there's a couple different areas, Jill, that we talk about around technology to help with that change management, and that's truly what this is. You're really going through, an evolution, right, from one medium to an electronic medium. But there are definitely key areas that technology has to have, and this will be some of what we show you, but the idea that anywhere we can, we should automate. So anywhere where I don't need a person walking out, or I don't need eyes on this certain inspection, or anywhere where data might live, let's try and automate that information. And really, this is an area over the last 5, 6, 7 years, we've seen the industry just start to get, exciting, where we're talking about that ability to truly automate tasks. Can I automate that temperature reading? Can I automate scale of information? Can I automate my supplier process, right? All those things that kind of bog us down during a day. But what you really need secondarily then is, as we talked about, on your first slide, Joe, we're saturated with a whole bunch of information in our private lives. And right there in instantaneous seconds, you're making decisions of what's valuable to you and what's not valuable to you. So when you talk about tens of thousands of millions of records, it's very important that ability to capture data is smart. The idea that it can take you in, and I'm going to, as we go through the presentation here today, I'll show you some examples of this, but take you into an area where technology can help give direction to your end user. Maybe it alerts you. Maybe it has a compliance engine that says, hey, by the way, Jill, this isn't right based on your program, allowing it to flag you on certain items and truly catch issues as soon as possible, right, as quickly as possible. But then the third element is it's not just, I think 5, 6, 7 years ago, everybody was talking about, hey, it's cool, let's use this technology and we'll capture information, That really isn't what started to drive organizations to do this, because what really drives it is that end game, the knowledge, the live business intelligence, the idea that we have organizations today with flat screens and monitors living in their facility with them, in their breathing environment, in their operations, and giving data back. Hey, Jill, here's where you stand on this run. Here's where you stand on this line. Here are these sampling programs. Here are these checks. All of that stuff being done in that instantaneous matter is really how you start to see benefits from these programs. And then at the end of the day, as you're helping that operation run, the fourth component is that you need one area to come back to very quickly. A customer calls you, has a question. Where do you go to find that information? Wouldn't it be great to go to one system and find everything that happened to your product that day? Everything that happened from the point you received something into the organization to the point it went out as a finished product check, and maybe even documented with photographs. But the idea that these 4 areas are really key components we see, and to your point, Joe, we've really started to see the technology advance here over the past couple of years, where this is now becoming readily available, and it doesn't have to be overly complex nor overly expensive.
Well, and I think it's interesting, too, when you think about technology and sort of adoption and what's right for you, too, the reason we really say 4 key ways, if you really do want to leverage technology for what it can achieve, if you don't have these 4 components, then a paper form or a shared, siloed system, you might as well just stick to it. And I probably shouldn't have said it that way, but in the respect that you've got to be able to get information from your data that allows you to be more efficient, smarter, instead of working harder each day. And that's the goal here, right? It's really leveraging technology to help you within your operation. So when you think about that, we'll dive into. So what are those sort of tools for success? And we all know this is a SafetyChain webinar, so of course we're going to share a little bit about our tools for success and how they're being utilized and the results being achieved. When we look about from a suite of solutions, it's the idea that you still are leveraging those 4 key ways: automation, smart data collection, the live business intelligence, and the readiness and centralized data records. But really, what are you trying to achieve? Supplier compliance, if you have hundreds or thousands of suppliers, can technology help you be more efficient and effective? Food safety, running your HACCP programs more efficient, or your GFSI programs and so forth. Food quality, making sure that you're within the line specifications are being met, so you're not having to rework or waste or, worse off, getting customer returns and so forth. Even down to your CIP and how are you using your utilities and your chemicals, and are you overusing? Are your washes always compliant, and having the data you need to make that more efficient, as well as mitigating some of the materials loss throughout that whole process. So those are some of the key areas that, SafetyChain and our solutions achieve. And with that, what we're going to do here and take the opportunity is pass this over to Dave, who's really going to just take you through each of these areas at a very high level, right? And then just to give you a taste of what can be accomplished. And then from there, we'll talk about results. So Dave, let me go ahead and take us out of full screen. We'll pass you over the clicker, if you will, and we'll get going on the different areas of our technology tools.
For all the people on the phone, this is where Jill becomes very nervous because she gave me control of the proverbial ball here, right, Jill? And now she's very, very nervous as we go through this. But I think that this is going to be fun, and hopefully this will get everybody up on the edge of their seats, because I'm not going to sit here and just show you screenshots, right? I thought what would be fun today, and this is what we referenced early on, is let's show you some real technology today, right? So, you can understand we can do demonstrations for hours and hours, and we have great people here at SafetyChain that can do that for you. So if you'd like, at the end of this, please let us know, and we can spend, time with you to focus directly on what it's on. But I thought that instead of me sitting here and sharing screenshots with you today, which I will, I'll still share a couple screenshots with you, but I thought it'd be cool to show you some live technology too. And what we did is we broke it down into those components of what Jill just talked about, the different, I'll show you a little bit about supplier compliance, a little bit about food safety and quality. We'll talk about clean in place technology, and then we'll wrap it back up with Jill. But this is where I thought that it would be cool to kind of break out of the mold a little bit. So we're all familiar with supplier compliance. Everyone hears about it, right? FSMA helped drive it. Everyone's talking about onboarding programs and how you actually achieve that. And I hope that everybody on the call right now is thinking about how you do that today, right? Most of you, again, probably thinking of that slide, right? Excel spreadsheets. I send a lot of emails, Dave. I ask my suppliers to follow up with certain things. Kind of a pain in the neck, to be honest, right? And then if you're a supplier, which many of you are on the phone, you go, yeah, Dave, I've seen some of these technologies. And guess what? Some of the technologies are a pain in the neck. So the idea here is that it has to be easy to use. Number one, as we talk about technology, anything around adoption, the technology has to be easy to use, right? As much as I said, you have these great programs that that you're going to try to put into this technology. The technology has to be easy to use. You need tools to onboard your suppliers and portals for suppliers to go to, and the idea that you can then, actually manage those documents. But lastly, let's really start talking about how we start to capture data, right, in a system. So, as everyone's sitting there, hopefully watching my screen, I'm changing the screen into a live environment right now, and this may look familiar to many of you. This is an area in a technology, the SafetyChain technology, where you can identify requirements for your suppliers. If I could see you all in the big room right now, you could raise your hand and say, yep, I have requirements for my suppliers, Dave. And some of those are, I need a kosher certificate. I need them to complete a vendor questionnaire, right? I need an organic certificate, depending on who it is and where it is. The idea that it's not just driven by your suppliers, it's also driven by items. So a supplier may provide you separate differing items, and you may have different requirements for those items, right? Should be very familiar with you. From a technology standpoint, the idea that you can take these requirements, put them into a system very easily, and then assign them to your suppliers, which takes us to the next step in the process with technology. Well, today you may be emailing a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet or telling your customer, your supplier, where to go to get information. The idea that using a technology like this, you can generate these requirements to a supplier. They receive a notification, and that supplier then comes actually into technology themselves, right? So here I'm logging in as a supplier now. When the supplier comes into the system, they see something completely different. They don't see what Jill sees. They don't see what Dave sees. The supplier sees what you want them to see and what you're asking for them to complete. Simply, easily, one page, simple access. We get feedback about this all the time from the suppliers using our system. Hey, it's the easiest system we've had to use to date, right? There's a bunch of these different technologies out there. Sometimes I get lost because I have to click through and figure out what's truly being required of me. Sometimes it's tough for me to see the feedback when things are sent back and forth through the system. All of this is built into the technology, making it simple, as you're seeing the screen here, for a supplier to engage, and that really starts to drive success. If you can make it simple to use, you're going to get people to use the technology. If it's difficult, they're going to bail. They're going to cancel on it. They're going to be difficult to work with. They're going to say, hey, I don't want to do this. This stinks worse than me sending you an email back. So the idea here is that you want to keep it simple. Have a system like SafetyChain that can generate requirements out, and then watch as those suppliers can complete those requirements themselves using technology. Now, what happens in your process? I'm going to log out here and come back in as my other user here, as a food safety person or a quality individual within an organization. Well, once that supplier completes those tasks, guess what happens then? Those tasks need to be approved, right? They need to come into someone in your organization. That still has to happen. Someone still needs to review and make sure things are copacetic, if you will, right? The idea that a technology can enable that workflow, Jill, it can make it simple. Hey, instead of worrying about where it's at and, oh, did I get an email back for that? A system starts to capture this, track it, and provide the ability for everybody on the phone to then, you know, accept or reject or review different documentation as they go through it, right? Approve it, reject it, and send it forward. So a little bit of your process happens there and occurs, right? But then let's take it one step further. What if you had the ability with technology, and I'm going to come back here to a screen, to see who's late, to see who hasn't completed it, to see who my approved suppliers are, to see where those suppliers are at. The idea that technology can enable you to manage this process, because the key element, as we all know, with anything, whether it's a supplier program, whether it's a food safety program, whether it's a quality program, it's not the setup that's the pain in the neck. I mean, it kind of is, right? I mean, you go through a process to set it up. But truly, it's the maintenance that's the pain in the neck, the constantly monitoring it, the constantly maintaining it, the constantly making sure that things are getting done. That becomes the pain in the neck. That becomes the wasted hours and time that you go through, right? It's not just supplier requirements like documents and questionnaires and things like that. What if you had the ability to use technology? So let's get out of the game of that clipboard that's sitting at your receiving dock and use the technology to start grading those receiving or those shipments that are coming into you, doing those trailer inspections on a mobile device, having the ability to capture this information, take photographs of the data as it comes into the organization, and then ultimately start the scorecard off of it. What does all this mean? Who's my most responsive suppliers? Who do I have everything from which supplier? How does this work, and where am I at today? This is the area where you start to affect a supplier program, right? Again, there's pain in the neck, there's hours, there's time, there's labor, but really, what's everybody want? Everybody just wants good performing suppliers. That's what we all desire, and most times it is. But wouldn't it be good to be able to do that comparison, or at least give feedback to your supplier, predictive feedback based on data, not a gut feeling to your supplier? Hey, here's what we've seen. Can you help us with this? That's what we all want, and we all have those long-term relationships to show for it, right? So a little bit about supplier technology and supplier compliance in that realm. You know, you want to minimize time, obviously, and overhead, and just really try to not only comply with those, you know, regulatory and non-regulatory requirements, but truly have a tool that can start to help you assist your suppliers, help you help your suppliers, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and being the best performing suppliers they can be. Here's what we've seen, here's what we get, right? Data's tough to fudge, data's tough to you know, wiggle through. So it's good. It's not, you don't want it to be harsh. You want it to be a good open relationship, and here's how it works. And that's what these type of tools allow you to do with your supplier compliance programs. So let's take it one step further into, now I've received things, I may have suppliers, I may have all that documentation together, I now have something in my facility, in my production environment, in my DC, in whatever the building is you just received your supplier items from. It may be ingredients, it may already be packaged goods that you have coming in. But the idea here with food safety and quality that we talked about was you need that smart data collection. You need that ability to actually start to evolve from this reactionary mode to the preventative mode. And I'll give you a couple examples of this. So first and foremost, for anybody on the phone today that's related to paper or maybe a tree, don't take offense to this, but it's not very smart. Paper's not smart. Paper doesn't know who I am. It doesn't know what time it is. It doesn't know where I'm at. And by the way, it doesn't even know what I'm writing down on it. It has no concept of that. But where technology has really came into this business and changed the game is technology can do that, right? I log into a mobile application. It knows who I am. It knows what time it is. It also can give me feedback. It can interact with me. Think about it. I have little kids, so some of you on the phone I'm sure may too. Think about how their eyes light up with some of that interaction with their devices today, right? That's because it's interactive. They don't light up for a piece of paper that's sitting there. It's fun to color for sure, and I'll never bang on coloring, but the idea that these tablets really start to interact with people, it tells them what they should do. It gives them feedback and best practices. And what I mean by that is I pull out of the screenshots and we come back into the area that Jill gets nervous on. Let's look at the live environment for this. Let's look at an example, right? So the idea that I'm coming in here and I'm going to show you what I'm going to show you is just a live view of a form here in the system. This happens the same way on mobile devices as it would here as I'm showing you on the web. But the concept is this, that logic can be built into these technologies. This should be something I hope everybody on the phone recognizes, right? Very standard metal detector check. Everybody's probably either seen one or uses one today. My example and my comment about paper is this. I come in here, I see a question. The question says, hey, you know, was it detected? Is that a pass or a fail? If it passes, that's great. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a date and a timestamp on that record and making sure it was complete. Perfect, right? What happens if it fails? Well, on a piece of paper, I just write down it fails, and I may even have to read what I need to go do, right? Oh, this failed. Now go call Jill. You know, let Jill know what just happened. But with technology, it can start to actually give you those hints. It can work with your end users. Notice how, depending on what I select, the system dynamically starts to tell me what to do. This has been huge, right? Think about the people who come into your facility and say, well, how do your end users know to do this check, Jill? How's that work? Oh, well, guess what? You know, the form actually tells them how to do it, right? And it actually walks them through that process. Or maybe even better, not only does the form have the logic built into it, but maybe you're actually giving access back to the actual standard operating procedure, the actual document that tells those end users how to do this process or do this check. So pulling this all together with technology, making it simple, it's easy to use. Again, just like with the supplier side, the forms have to be simple. They have to look familiar. They don't look like something different. However, what they do become is they become engaging and they begin to be able to give direction to your end users. And this is to that point of prevention. As soon as I can put something in the end user's hands, they're the ones, they're the eyes, they're the one doing the check. By the way, Jill, this just happened. You need to do this, right? That's the idea of really moving this thing up the chain and up the line to where it becomes quite useful and also in that preventative area. Now, to take it one step further, as we're talking about our process flow here, right? I started with suppliers. We received some goods in. We're now talking about forms that may occur within your facility. Let's take this one step further and talk about what happens to all those records, right? Those records then need to be pulled together into somewhere, right? Today, many of you might be doing it into a filing cabinet. You might be doing it into Excel. What you're looking at here is a technology that is providing you the codification of SQF. Look over here on your left side of your screen with the actual code elements in it, right? And it's rolling those records up into the system for you to be audit ready, inquiry ready, whatever you want to call it. But you have access to this because it's putting it in the right place. The system knows where to put these records, so that way when questions come up, you can easily go find that information. And what you're looking at here are the records against 2.4.3.1 of SQF, right? And that can work for anything, right? BRC, or you even have the CFIA program in here, and you know, FSSC 22000 and Primus GFS. So many of you will ask, it's a very configurable way But this is how we believe you go through your days. Your day really is run by these programs, and it's really nice to have that ability to roll those programs up into these records. But that isn't where it should stop. That's the fun part. We're all asked, hey, this is like the time suck, right? This is the time spent to roll up all these records. Let's take it one step further where you can truly start to see things in real time, right? Where you can actually start to see these records as they come in. As I mentioned earlier, we have folks today that are showing real-time statistical process control charts on their processing floor. The idea that these charts can be updated, real time. And I know many of you on the phone, I see actually a couple questions coming in as I'm doing this. What's real time mean, Dave? Well, I mean, seconds, instantaneous. This screen's now set to refresh every minute. So as data is coming in every minute, that information is flowing up onto these screens live and in effect, right? The idea that you can make decisions on this data. Really tough when you're not using technology to actually have this insight into the system, right? And have this ability to start to track and trend items. Because it's not just the real-time information of data, but it's also that historic trending of information. So the example I was here on initially when I came to the screen, think about the idea of downtime reasons. Why do we go down? Why do we have downtime? What's that mean? What are the most common areas that affect that downtime? All of that information can be captured in here, easily rolled up, and give you a tool now to go back. So not only is it helping you be compliant and answer those customer questions, but now it's giving you a tool to really start to fine-tune that operation as well, which we've seen really become exciting for organizations, because now you're showing value back to the organization, not just doing an overhead mission-critical objective of capturing records and putting them someplace, right? This is where the data becomes live. So we're going to take it one step further, and as I summarize here around the food safety and quality items, right? Obviously, early detection of issues and 24/7 inquiry, like I said, but really the true value comes back when you start to have analytics, when you start to have that data to better run your operation, when we can all put our hand up and say, look, I can help with this. I know the information that's behind it. I know why it's happening, right? It starts to become predictive as well. And many of you I see here today on the call have multiple facilities. Think about what technology can do for you, right? You don't need to actually drive over to the facility to see their documentation. You don't need to drive over to the facility to see even how the line's running possibly. You can see it online. You can log in at home. Jill, we could interrupt your long vacation so you can log in and see the data from anywhere you're at, right, via the website. So the idea that's one area, right? So supplier we talked about, food safety and quality we talked about. Now let's really start to talk about some areas where you can automate the process, true automation. Many of you have things in your facility where data is being captured today, PLCs, circuits, items throughout your facility that are capturing data today. They're just not joined together, right? One of the areas that we're very proud of is this clean-in-place optimization. We have patented technology on how to aggregate the data together from within your facility, right? The idea that it can help you with chemical usage and sustainability, right? A very common area that everybody seems to be focusing on today. This also is driven by analytics and then also having FDA-validated reports. Hey, I need to have a report that I need to show my auditor as well, right? So the idea here is that with CIP optimization, very similar to what we were just talking about. I'll give you a screenshot again so we're not all bored sitting there looking at PowerPoints. But here's a monitor, right? A dashboard view of my completed washes, my exceptions in my washes. What about my chemical consumption? Many of you are quite familiar with the amount of money being spent on chemicals, right? What if we could affect that by a point, by a percentage and a half? That'd be pretty valuable. And a system that not only can help affect that spend, but then can help you be regulatory audit ready, right? Here's my report as well. So here is where we're really starting to talk about true automation, talking about receiving data from PLCs, from equipment, and then aggregating that data together. The idea that this will give you those codes of, hey, what has happened? What are the different counts? Why are washes failing? and at the same exact time providing you, as you'll see down here at the bottom of your page, providing the actual unalterable date and timestamps of when that happened, how long it happened, what the temperature was, how long it remained at that temperature. All of that information is being captured here within the system, and then you can get really crazy. Like, this is where the fun stuff happens. You can legitimately live view and see what's happening within those washes, right? As the data is flowing into the system. This is really where you start to talk about prevention. You start to talk about data being aggregated together. And it just marries the world of, you know, both your regulatory requirements as well as those non-regulatory requirements, but affecting the bottom line, right? Why did the wash stop? Why do we have to restart that wash? What happened? How much chemical do we waste during that? How can we affect and make that change? All of this is quite valuable, and hopefully there's some nodding heads back there on the other side of the phone, and not everyone nodding off, I should say, but some nodding heads, and really what this comes down to is minimize and maximize, right? Minimize the time you're cleaning and maximize the time you're running. And I think everybody here on the phone can relate to that being just vitally critical, right? Hey, if we could run more, we can produce more, which ultimately means we can make more, which is good. And then we all have the great programs out there today around sustainability. How can I eliminate or minimize, not eliminate obviously, but minimize my water usage? How can I minimize my electricity spend? How can I minimize my chemical usage? All of that is wildly important and truly has bottom line value from a technology standpoint. So using technology to drive that bottom line. And the last piece here, before I hand it back over to Jill to hit on the last piece of technology, this should be fun and hopefully raises a bunch of eyebrows. Well, what does material loss mean? You heard Jill and I mention this earlier in the conversation. You know, is it waste? Is it rework? Well, what if you could use technology to actually monitor that process, to actually automate the process of receiving data, right? And again, for many of you on the phone, you know, some of you may have facilities where this is capable, some not, and we look at different technology to fill those gaps, right? Some of you may say, hey, I don't have equipment, Dave. Cool. Let's use a tablet. It's going to put it as close to real time as you can. But if you do have equipment that can generate data, you can really start looking at the whole process. The whole process from start to finish. When something shows up at your door and you have a scale that's being weighing that truck, wouldn't it be nice to have that scale weight automated and coming into your facility? And then as you go through your process, whether that's the actual processing, whether it's the cleaning of produce, whether it's the actual production of milk, right? The idea that there's different testing and sanitization and sterilization that goes on, as well as packaging. Think if you could follow that process through with data, with actually capturing information through the process, using technology, again, to minimize changeovers, to minimize downtime, but also to understand where you are losing that product through the process. Where are we losing that product so we can affect it, which in turn will affect the bottom line. So, you know, as we wrap this up around a technology standpoint, you know, Jill kind of has 4 main areas out there, you know, automation, smart data collection, analytics, and business intelligence, right? And having this one repository of information and data. Hopefully you've seen some examples here, but really the angle for everyone, because technology is fun, right? Everyone here showed up today because technology is fun. It is. It's a fun business to be in. We all like technology. We've all embraced technology. But truly, how companies can adopt technology, you have to look at how it can start to affect the organization in a very positive way. It's not just eliminating paper anymore because, you know, sure, we all don't want to cut down more trees and we want to save the forest, but at the end of the day, you have to have a bottom line value to why you use technology. And that's hopefully some of the things you saw through this presentation. So with that, hopefully it was a little different. People got to see some live technology today. Hopefully it kept some people awake. Didn't take too much coffee to get through it. I know some of you are on your lunch break too. But as I bring Jill back into the conversation, you know, the main areas that we really talk about here at SafetyChain is the real-time visibility, giving you knowledge and giving you control of those operations, right? Whether that's ensuring compliance and moving it up to the closest point to be preventative-based rather than reactionary. The idea of having that data to actually control those costs, to understand what is affecting your bottom line costs, and then ultimately reducing your risks. I mean, that's why we all do this, right? Very risk-adverse people here on the phone, myself included. I can raise my hand on that. The idea is that what you want this to do is help the organization reduce that overall risk and also reduce the overall spend on how you're processing business. So with that, Jill, I haven't taken a breath, I think, in a couple minutes. I don't know whether I've lost you there or not, but I think we can go through a couple results achieved, and we'll wrap this up for everybody. Is that what you want to do?
No, I think that sounds great. So let me go ahead and take that control back and the slides and so forth, and then we'll just spend just a few more minutes as we wrap up our session in the interest of everyone's time, and we'll keep this moving forward. So we talk about, at the end of the day here, as Dave was saying, yes, killing less trees is always a good thing, but ultimately, why are you doing this? It's to achieve results. So SafetyChain, we're really driven towards that and our customer success and leveraging technology to have everyday success. And some of the things that we'd love to share, and partly is, that we do work with customers throughout the food supply chain. We're very proud of our customers and partner with them to their ongoing success. But there's really specific achievable results, and we'll go through these fairly quickly in the interest of time. And I'll pass it back to you, Dave, in the interest of breath, but I know how passionate you are about sharing some of these things. So why don't you just take us through,
I'll keep them quick, Jill.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dave.
There's just a couple good examples here for everybody. I know that everybody likes to hear, well, how's this worked? What have you done for someone else? How does this affect me? I thought it was good to pull out a couple of real-world examples. Some of the things we've seen by using technology, this is an example of a grower, right? Ag company, growing a lot of product. The idea that using technology, they help to not only improve turnaround times, but also reduce customer complaints. A big deal, right? 58% reduction in customer complaints, and that happens because of the real-time verification of data. Product wasn't going to the wrong person, customer requirements, specifications were being met, and the idea that there weren't non-compliant shipments. And I know that doesn't happen all the time, but the idea that you keep customers happy, obviously that's a good value back to your bottom line. And it was easy, right? Technology can do this automatically. It can verify the information directly. So a good example there, Jill.
Absolutely. And then we'll throw it over to a seafood processor, and I love some stories. We work with quite a few seafood companies, but again, the idea of using technology, not just in the processing, but out on the boats as fish is being brought in. So take us just at a high level, some of the things, fun things that we're doing with that.
There's a couple different areas technology helps with, in the seafood business. Obviously, you have suppliers, that ability to have transparency across your supply chain and where that's coming from. And we're all well aware of NOAA and all these regulations. But think about also the idea of that receiving form we were talking about, that grading form, how that can be important to your salesman to know what the fish looks like. What type of quality and grade are we getting in yesterday? What do we have? What's happening actually as these things come in? But one of the biggest areas, and especially for those on the phone that are in the seafood industry, there's a lot of travel around it, right? The idea that technology allows you to reduce that because you can see what's going on. You can get a photograph of that fish. You can get the documentation from that supplier anywhere in the world. You may have multiple facilities and need to go to those different facilities. The idea, again, that technology can be used to get an insight, a window. Now, nothing will ever replace, and we're not here saying you should replace your 2 eyes on that floor in that processing facility. But what we can replace is your 2 eyes having to drive to that facility to look at documentation and records and, some visual picture that was taken. That absolutely can be replaced, and that's some of the results we're seeing here in this with our different seafood processors.
No, absolutely. And I think the photo capture is something that I know our customers always appreciate. Whatever it is, they're able to capture the photo within the system, date stamp record, proof, right, that, where things are at or what they need to share. I think that's great. We adore some of our customers in the beverage industry, as we can attest that, sometimes on Friday afternoon, but sort of share what we're doing for a major beverage producer.
Not all of them are alcoholic, Jill. Some of them are just simple fuzz and caffeine. But yeah, absolutely. And for the beverage processors out here on the call today, think about real time. You're processing things in mass. Hundreds of thousands of bottles being filled in minutes and seconds. And the idea, again, of prevention, the idea that making sure all your checks are being done and accomplished, the idea that you don't have to rerun things through a metal detector or an x-ray machine because that those checks were done. And that's some of the areas that we've seen really affect in that beverage industry is that real-time capability, that prevention capability. Hey, by the way, stop, this didn't happen, right? Okay. That doesn't mean it happened 30 minutes later and all the things that ran through that line for the last 30 minutes have to either be re-inspected, reworked, or run back through. Sometimes it's even cheaper just to do away with it, right? But the idea here is that's, again, technology giving you that real-time information and ensuring that your programs are being done as they should be done.
Yeah, and that's a real example as far as being able to catch things at the earliest point possible to mitigate the impact, right? CIP, it's, clean in place and material loss. It's interesting you think about this as far as just the amount of money that goes into the CIP process, and then, if it didn't run correctly and that you have to rerun it, what does that mean from a, process standpoint for production just stopping? So, share a little bit as far as CIP and some of the results that our customers are achieving.
Yeah, I think there's kind of just some real basic, and to your point of brevity, Joe, we'll keep it short, but there's some very basic things that hopefully you heard us say earlier. The idea that, number one, you can see how much or how little is processing through, so that visibility is vitally important when you use technology in clean in place. But that idea then to continually adjust it, right? How much chemical are you using? To Jill's point, why did that wash stop? What's the most common reason our washes stop? Why did they stop halfway through? The idea that you can affect this with technology, with the data being captured, but this is really a fun area, right, and where we see the industry going. This is where you really start to talk about, actual pieces of equipment communicating with technology, and we're seeing savings on chemical usage, Jill, like you mentioned, water usage, like we talked about earlier, electricity, utilities, things that are quite expensive to organizations. And again, think it doesn't mean you can do away with chemicals. You're going to use chemicals. That's your approved process. That's your program. I think if you could eliminate just a percentage of that and go through and you could justify an entire technology spend just on that alone, Joe. And we've seen that done by some of our customers. I may have lost Jill. That was it.
No, absolutely, Dave. No. And it's interesting, too, when you look at the dashboards and, having that dollar amount of impact that can be saved, it's the cost to actually implement is nominal compared to the return. So this is the stuff that obviously Dave and I have been in this, we've been entrenched. SafetyChain is only for the food industry. We're very proud of that because we understand that complexities are there and what you're trying to achieve day in and day out is so important, and we all appreciate that because we all, end of the day, are consumers of the products being produced by our customers. So we're very excited and pleased and continuously enhance and improve the solutions to get better results, but we'd love to take the next step with you as it makes sense and in really discerning, these technology tools, are they right for your company? Is there true tangible results that can be achieved? And we'll help you through that. And the good news is, and we didn't go through this, is SafetyChain from a partnership standpoint, we don't just turn on our system and say, go have fun. We're true partners in our success and the understanding, implementation, ramp up and training and ongoing. So we really appreciate your time today. I know that we said 45 minutes, but, we had Dave on the call, so that wasn't going to happen. I think it was good information that certainly came, and, and that's our quest is to continuously learn, grow, and share within this industry. FSMA Fridays is part of that, monthly series, thousands of people are part of it and logging in once a month to get the latest on FSMA with Dr. David Atchison of the Atchison Group, one of our board members, is a great way to keep in touch. But more importantly, how can we help you, right? So you'll get a request form, if you want more information, you want a ROI or, more deep dive into our demo, let's get that going. And we're out there a lot. So SQF Show is coming up in Dallas here very quickly, Food Safety Consortium, and a few other events as well. So we look forward to continuously engaging with you all, and we really appreciate all your time. And Dave, I know I give you a really hard time, but just because I know we're both so passionate about what we do, and I really appreciate your time as well and sharing a bit about SafetyChain today.
Thanks, everybody, for your time, for sure. Thanks, Joe.
Okay, have a good one.